Support for this podcast comes from St. Alphonsus Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Clinics, with physicians, physical therapists, and trainers who treat sports and performance-related injuries, with locations across the valley. More information on services and locations at stalphonsus.org/stayactive.
The Senate has eliminated public media funding, money that helped us reach rural Idaho with wildfire warnings and critical emergency alerts. Without it, voices may go silent in places that need us most. And it's not just Idaho. Our regional partnership through the Mountain West News Bureau is also at risk. We're the front line of trusted information in the West, and we're depending on you to keep it going. Donate now at boisestatepublicradio.org. There's no time to wait.
It's The Connector for Wednesday, July 23rd. Good morning, I'm Troy Oppie. This morning, Idaho's former budget chief and the current head of the State Health and Welfare Department appeared before a Senate Confirmation Committee yesterday. Less spending but higher taxes in the fiscal year 2026 budget from Ada County. The sentencing for admitted Moscow murderer Bryan Kohberger is today. And a provision to rename part of the Kennedy Center for the First Lady comes from an Idaho congressman. Those stories and more this morning on The Connector, Idaho Daily News from Boise State Public Radio. The sentencing hearing for Bryan Kohberger is today, following his guilty plea earlier this month when he admitted to killing 4 University of Idaho students in an off-campus residence in November 2022. Kohberger agreed to a deal for 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole or appeal in exchange for prosecutors dropping the death penalty. Today's hearing is expected to run most of the day and could extend to Thursday, with families of the slain students and other victims allowed to share impact statements. Witnesses in the case may also be called by prosecutors or Kohberger's defense, and evidence can be presented, though a condition of the plea deal is that Kohberger will not ask for leniency. It's not known if he will make a statement. His responses at the hearing where he pleaded guilty were limited to yes or no. The sentencing hearing begins at 9 a.m. at the Ada County Courthouse. Idaho's Director of Health and Welfare and the state's former budget chief faced at times blistering questions from U.S. senators yesterday. Alex Adams hopes to be confirmed as Undersecretary for a federal family program. Here's our James Dawson with more.
Alex Adams has led the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare since last summer, largely focusing on recruiting foster parents and improving conditions for foster kids. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon says he's gathered more than 100 claims of discrimination against LGBTQ foster kids across the country. Adams responded this way when he was asked how he would stand up for these kids and others who face discrimination.
Following the best interest of the child and ensuring all kids are treated with respect and dignity and protected from harm, and following the law is my operating principle.
Adams says he's not sure of the specifics in these cases and wants to review them. Adams' nomination still needs approval from the full Senate before he could officially begin his role. James Dawson, Boise State Public Radio News.
Idaho Republican Congressman Mike Simpson inserted a provision into a new spending bill for the Department of the Interior this week. Simpson wants the Opera House at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. to be renamed in honor of First Lady Melania Trump. The First Lady is honorary chair of the Board of Trustees at the Kennedy Center. Simpson, in a statement, says the naming honors her love for the arts. He chairs the House Appropriations Subcommittee for the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies, which oversees the operations budget for the Kennedy Center. That bill passed out of committee yesterday, but is likely to meet some resistance in the Senate, where appropriations require at least some Democratic support to pass. Childbirths are on the decline in Idaho, but the state's population continues to grow. Julie Luqueta has details.
Analysis of data from last year's census shows the population, currently at about 2 million residents, will hit 2.4 by 2034.
Our growth rate is expected to be about 4 times as fast as the rest of the nation.
At a webinar on Tuesday, Idaho Department of Labor economist Sam Wilkenhauer says that's happening despite a falling birth rate.
Families are smaller than they used to be in Idaho as everywhere else, and that means that now and in the future, the main source of population growth in Idaho is going to be new residents moving into the state.
More than a quarter of the state's population is made of people who moved here since the 90s.
In Idaho, there are only 68% as many infants as there are 18-year-olds.
Wolkenhauer says the senior population is growing at a higher rate than younger residents.
We're going to get a smaller and smaller batch of young workers aging into the workforce.
Rural areas are also growing, but the majority of the population growth is happening in urban areas, specifically Ada, Kootenai, and Canyon counties. Julie Duquetta, Boise State Public Radio News.
Ada County is closer to setting its upcoming fiscal year's budget, which is smaller compared to the current year by more than $1.7 million, down 0.5%. But it also requires more than $28 million from the county's rainy day fund to be balanced.
The county has lived up to the mantra, fix it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without for many years.
That's Ada County Clerk Trent Triple at a budget hearing last night. There are 53,000 more residents in the county since 2020, but the county workforce is at 40 workers per 10,000 residents. That's the same as it was in 2010, a point of pride, says Triple.
Bloated government workforces at the federal level and many other jurisdictions around the country just are not present here in Ada County.
Public safety takes up half the county's $389 million budget. Staffing costs across the county will increase more than $8 million from last year. There will be 47 new employees in the new budget, plus a 1.5% cost of living salary bump and merit-based raises. Only 15 of those new staff positions, though, required new funding, according to the clerk. The county cut $21 million compared to the current year's capital spending plan and is using that $28 million from savings for non-operating expenses.
Because of unspent budget from previous years, both in personnel and capital operating, in addition to increased revenue from interest associated with investments, Ada County has saved money in its fund balance, which allows us to dedicate some of those funds to one-time projects without bonding or levying for additional revenue.
Sales and liquor tax revenue is flat. The county instead is increasing property tax collections 2.9%, about $10 million more dollars. But the county only gets about a third of residents' property tax revenue. The other 40 taxing districts, cities, schools, the highway district, and others, get the other two-thirds. Many of those districts are also having to increase their property tax collections by at least 3% for the coming fiscal year. Ada County commissioners will vote next week on moving this proposed budget forward in the approval process. Residents can see detailed spending and revenue reports for every county department in the Budget Explorer on the Ada County website. Idaho Governor Brad Little has appointed Annie Henderson Hawes to the state legislature, filling the District 16 Seat B vacancy created when Representative Todd Achilles stepped down to run for U.S. Senate. Hawes is a lawyer in private practice and an adjunct professor at the University of Idaho Law School in Boise. She's also the lead attorney for Idahoans United for Women and Families. That's the advocacy group working to get an abortion rights initiative onto the statewide ballot in November 2026. Hawes will serve the remainder of the current term through next year. The state Democratic Party did not immediately respond to a request to identify the other two nominees for appointment that the party provided to the governor for consideration. That's the process when a legislative member steps down. 48-year-old Boise man faces federal child pornography charges after a child enticement investigation. Gary Williams was taken into custody last Friday after investigators say they were alerted earlier this month to a possible online enticement of a minor. What they found was a social media account linked to Williams, with inappropriate posts on photos of children. Additional preliminary evidence indicates Williams had sexual conversations with minors online and obtained and viewed child pornography. Boise police say there may be multiple victims. They're urging anyone with information or concern to contact investigators through Ada County's non-emergency dispatch line. And that's your connector for this Wednesday morning. Our general manager is Tom Michael. Our news director is Sasha Woodruff. Lacey Daly is our digital strategy manager. I'm Troy Oppie. Hope you have a great Wednesday. Make it a great day out there, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.